Talking with the experts.
Explore what it takes to be a successful CEO in 2023 with Joe Leech in episode 509.
There's a lot of this you see within the workforce generally, I notice as well, is again, because I work for a lot of startups, the tendency there is to hire young people because, again, young people have lots of spare hours in their day where they can work 40, 50, 60 hours. And that's what the perceived wisdom is of a startup. So it's the US startup, you have to put the graft in, you have to hustle, put the hours in to do the work. And the reality is yeah, you can do that in your 20s. But actually, do you know what? If you hire folks who are a bit older, they can do the equivalent amount of work in half the time because they've got the experience to do that stuff better, quicker, faster. They're not having to experiment to do 5 different things to figure out what to do. They know what to do. And so a lot of when I see is a lot of those sorts of early stage startups, when they grow beyond sort of 10 and 15 people and the founders are 3 years in and can't themselves work 60 hours a week anymore, that's the point when they can bring in people with that experience.
Talking with the experts.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts, where we believe that success is a journey, and every journey is easier with help from friends. That's why we bring you top-notch experts and real business heroes eager to share their lessons from the road to success. We delve into new topics each week: effective marketing strategies, innovative problem-solving, financial planning, and team building. We tackle everything you need to know to grow your business and keep it thriving. Whether you dream about launching your first startup or a business veteran looking to shake things up, we've got you covered. With each episode, you'll gain knowledge, boost your confidence, and be inspired to take action. So, grab a coffee, make yourself comfortable, and join our exciting journey. You're not alone in this. We're here, guiding you, cheering for you, and celebrating each milestone. Let's turn your business dreams into reality, starting today. Here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is all about business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today my guest is Joe Leech, and Joe is coming to us all the way from the UK, and the wonders of Zoom and internet and all those wonderful things. Now, Joe is a modern CEO, and he let me start that again. Sorry.
I'm a coach to CEOs. That's what I do.
Thank
so that's
you, yes.
All right.
Now, let me welcome Joe Leech to Talking with the Experts today. He is a coach to CEOs, and he works with them at the startup, the high growth, or the IPO to public company to the big exit. He helps define what it means to be a leader, how to create impact, how to grow alongside the business, and how to change the world, all while enjoying every part of the journey. Welcome, Joe. Thank you so much for joining me today. And my first question is always, how did you get to be where you are now?
That's a good question. Yeah, I often ask myself that question, really, because I work with some very high-profile individuals. So I work with startups, which is great and fun and interesting, but I also work with CEOs of some large enterprises, both in the UK and the US. Yeah, and I often ask myself that question, really. I started practically in internet stuff about 2004, 2005. I got a job early on working with some big US companies who were trying to crack the UK, most notably Marriott and eBay, who didn't quite culturally understand how to build technical stuff like websites and apps for the UK market. It was all kind of red buses and policemen with helmets and things like that on their home pages. And so I kind of helped them figure that out to understand culturally what they needed to do. And then that led me on to a career really working and supporting larger enterprise, big businesses like Marriott and eBay and Disney and people like that to run and kind of make their websites and the stuff they did more user-friendly, more focused on the customers and the end users. And then that took me from there into the kind of strategic approach of how they build technical stuff. And I got quite frustrated being in a kind of working with the doers and doing a lot of the doing myself in terms of design and building these sites in the decision making that wasn't, well, seemingly from where we were, not the best best decisions were being made. So I made it my mission to figure out, well, why are these decisions seemingly poorly made? And so I set myself the goal of working with CEOs to help them understand that, make better decisions and choices about what they do. And then fast forward years, and here I am working with the CEOs to make better choices and decisions about the work that they do, not only within their business, but also in their personal life as well.
So I guess one of the things that let's start at the founding stage. So when businesses are first starting up, what makes a founder a leader? You know, how can they become great, effective, efficient leaders?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It's when you're first starting a business, basically, often, you are employee number one, or there's only a few of you. So it's, what are you leading at that point? You're leading yourself and the business. So the skill set you need at that level is different from when you're leading a 2,000 employee business to a 10,000 employee business. Throughout the growth of the business, your approach to leadership needs to change. And when it's early stage, you have got a lot of things you're having to do. You're not only running the business and doing the majority of the work, but you're also representing that business out there, be that to investors or to customers, in a different way. And anytime you're there as the CEO, you bring a certain amount of CEO fairy dust with you. Even if it's a small business of 2 or 3 people, that title alone brings a level of fairy dust to any situation that you're in. So leadership does evolve. And really what it means early on is, of course, you've got to be proficient at doing the work that needs to be done in the business. And as that business grows, you no longer need to have that proficiency in doing the stuff, and actually you've got to let that go as the business grows. And the biggest challenge I see is actually not in the early stages, because you can get good at doing the work you have to do, be that consulting, do that building things, making things, creating a business in the first place. The hard part comes when actually you've got to let that go and become a leader of people and of teams and of businesses. And actually, part of the reason you probably started the business in the first place is because you enjoyed doing the job. You enjoyed doing the early stage stuff anyway. And so letting that go can often be the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I've had other guests on that we've discussed about, letting go of those tasks that you started the business with. And sometimes it's quite difficult to let go of things. I mean, even the things that you don't like. I mean, for me, bookkeeping is not my thing. I do not like bookkeeping. And the day that I can hand that over, I will be so happy.
But the thing is, as well, is what I find about entrepreneurs who do start their own businesses is they are good at stuff. Like, you're probably pretty good at bookkeeping better than most people are. And actually the reality is you find your kind of zone of excellence is quite wide. As a founder, you have to be great at like building email funnels and social media and all of these things in an early stage business, bookkeeping. And the reality is actually at some point you've got to realize that there are people not necessarily better than you, but who love doing that stuff more than you, and you can pass it over to them and they will get better than you. And that allows you to open up away from a zone of excellence into your zone of genius, which is the leadership piece that you want to bring there in the first place. So in entering your zone of leadership, a genius, you have to kind of really let go of the zone of excellence, which is often being pretty good at lots of other things and really honing in on being absolutely fantastic at just one thing. And that might just be leadership.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It's the letting go. Sometimes it's quite difficult. So we'll move on now from founders. And so you've got maybe 20 employees and you're now the CEO of a business, and you've not perhaps made it into a company just yet. So to get those 20 employees, what sort of skills would you see that CEO needs to have?
Yeah, this is a good point here, because the typical other challenge you see with a lot of CEOs at that early stage anyway is they hire people like them. You've got similar skills to them, similar views to them, because that's natural. You were attracted to people like us. And actually that can be a real challenge when you've got a small business, because again, as a CEO of a smaller business of up to 20 people, you're still doing a lot of the work. And a lot of resentment can come from both ways when people are trying to gently pull the work away from you. And, you see that person being as good, if maybe not quite as great, that you were doing that job. And likewise, they see you as the leader being the same way. So actually, the reality is the best thing to do is to not hire people who are just like you. It's to hire people that complement you. And that's hard to do. You've got to look for people who have got skills that are different from you. Maybe that you do struggle with attention to detail. You need to hire somebody who has got a great attention to detail. Maybe your analytical skills are fantastic, but you're not great at putting yourself out there and selling. You've got to hire somebody that's great at putting themselves out there and selling. And that requires you to look outside of what you normally might view as, you know, your ability to ascertain if this other human being is a great human being or a person like you, and realize actually you need to hire people who are not quite like you. They've got to complement you, and that means you've got to kind of push yourself out of the comfort zone of it being, well, I'm not quite sure if I quite understand you, but I like the way that you're different from me and you bring a complementary skill set. So being complementary is definitely the biggest skill you can do in terms of hiring that early team, really. And that's probably around about employee 6 or 7 you want to get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if we're all the same, it'd be a really boring world, I think.
Yeah. Do you know that advice is the same, is true all the way up? So when I work with a big, huge UK company, FTSE 100 company, and the CEO there, the board is, one of the challenges they've got is the board of directors is completely surrounded by people like them in charge. And that's not how it should be. You need that level of diversity throughout the business, because that's where interest comes from. That's where different ideas come from. And if everybody's the same, then innovation is not going to come suddenly from that, because you're all talking the same language. You're not going to have that kind of ability to see things differently and to understand that differently. So diversity is important right across all stages of growth of the business. Is you want to hire people that are different from you, because they're going to bring something different. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm not usually so agreeable. However, I do agree with what you're saying, because if you hire the same people like you, there can be times that there will be conflict, because even because you're so much alike, you think that your ideas are the same, and business can't grow, it can't look for new ideas. And you're right about innovation. There's no room for it, because you think alike and you use the same language, and it can be quite a difficult journey if you keep continuing to do that.
Yeah, I worked with the CEO of a construction company here in the UK, and they had the biggest challenge they had is they had a trade element where they sold to the general public in terms of buying building materials and tools and things like that. One of the big things that we noticed is the whole business was basically full of men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, the whole business, right? And their customer base was full of men in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. But they wanted to expand outside of that, get more younger people in buying, doing DIY, getting more women in, getting more, and they couldn't see beyond that. They were having crazy conversations about making pink drills, and you think at that point something's wrong when you think that that's the answer to the question. You need to get more diversity in across the organization to make the decisions at all levels. The only way you can really represent and be better for your customers is by representing them on the other side of that. And so it's incredibly important for change and for the ability for a business to grow, is to bring different people at different levels in. They bring an advantage. It's not a box ticking exercise. There's a real advantage in doing that stuff.
Yeah, well, you've got to bring in the new blood. So the ones that are younger than you, who have the maybe not more knowledge, but they're more savvy in the way the world is working at the moment, and their eyes aren't closed to all the stuff that maybe an older person's might be.
I know. And I saw that when I learned this lesson very early on, actually, when I was working with Marriott Hotels. When I started working with them, sort of mid 2000s, they were the hotel chain for the road warrior, right? The sales guy who either lives in Europe, lives in his car, in the US, is always on flights, who's always that way. He likes his Marriott hotel the way he likes it, and he stays there because it's Marriott and he's got loads of points. And basically their audience was, late 50s, early 60s. They were all retiring around them, and so their audience was disappearing all the time. And then you looked at the makeup of a lot of the team at Marriott, and there was you could see exactly why it was the way that it was. And they kept serving the same market of these boomers for 30, 40 years. And it's great because they built a whole business on that. But it comes to the point when your customers change and retire, and that was what was happening to them. And they were absolutely frightened of this fact that younger people were coming along and what they were trying to do. And some of their early forays into concepts for younger guests were just awful, just really dreadful. The sort
Very
of stuff
un-British.
Embarrassing uncle. And that diversity only came when they hired people at the right level to represent the new customers that they wanted within the business. That's when the change came, and it was lovely to see it when it did.
Yeah, a lot of businesses, here in Australia, it's the retirees that are obviously they've left their place of employment, and they're hiring the young ones, but they're letting a lot of that knowledge go. And the young ones don't have that level of knowledge that is needed. And, you know, even our retirement age is 67. You know, they're talking about rehiring retirees because that level of knowledge has gone out the window.
Yeah, there's a lot of this you see within the workforce generally, I notice as well. Is again, because I work for a lot of startups, the tendency there is to hire young people because, again, young people have lots of spare hours in their day where they can work 40, 50, 60 hours. And that's what the perceived wisdom is of a startup. So it's the US startup, you have to put the graft in, you have to hustle, put the hours in to do the work. And the reality is yeah, you can do that in your 20s. But actually, do you know what? If you hire folks who are a bit older, they can do the equivalent amount of work in half the time because they've got the experience to do that stuff better, quicker, faster. They're not having to experiment to do 5 different things to figure out what to do. They know what to do. And so a lot of when I see is a lot of those sorts of early stage startups, when they grow beyond sort of 10 and 15 people and the founders are 3 years in and can't themselves work 60 hours a week anymore, that's the point when they can bring in people with that experience. And there's 2 places, absolutely. Folks who are towards the end of their career, you've got a lot of experience to bring in a network of people. But there's also people who are coming back from parenting who want to work 2-3 days a week and have got an incredible skill set, but can't fit into that 40, 50, 60 hour a week schedule, but bring a huge amount of knowledge and experience with them. And the reality is, as a growing business, you don't need somebody for 60 hours a week. You need the right person at the right time with the right skills to give you what you need for 3 or 4 hours a week, or 10 hours a week.
Absolutely.
And it's just, again, understanding that and having that lesson and learning that lesson can be transformative. I worked with a startup recently, which was software as a service, SaaS, like a technical startup. Three guys running this fantastic business, doing incredibly well. They were looking for somebody in marketing. They were hiring people, you know, in their early 20s who totally understood how Instagram worked and were great on TikTok. But the reality is that's not where their customers were. They needed to hire somebody who had the experience of LinkedIn or places where their customers were. And they ended up hiring somebody who was a woman returning from work after raising a family. And the amount of insight and experience that she could bring to the business was incredible, far better than a team of 20-year-olds hammering TikTok would have been. And so it's really interesting understanding that in bringing different people in, you can really expand and strengthen the workforce hugely by bringing the right people at the right time.
Yeah, I remember when I turned 40 and I was unemployable basically because, you know, they wanted the young girls with the short skirts and the, you know, long hair, and they were very pretty. And once you hit 40, you know, you were too old. And and it was sort of a lot of ageism in the world, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I guess moving on now, you've got your 20 staff, and now you've got this huge, great company that you're trying to run. And so, you know, being a leader in that sort of sense, and then you may have a board of directors. How in the hell do you become a great leader in that situation?
Yeah, it's the most challenging time, I think. Is people think it's harder to get a business off the ground, and it is tough. Don't get me wrong; it's not an easy thing to do. But the challenge is the biggest reinvention time is around that point when you go above about 20 people. You have to really reinvent. You can't, you know, they call it, you know, basically when you can't, the 2 pizza problem. Once the company's above 2 pizzas, that's going to serve everybody. Things have got to change for you. And so you have to understand that your skill set and your outlook has to change as well. You have to truly become a leader away from being a doer. So you've got to let a lot of that stuff go. And that's a real challenge for people. I see it a lot of the time with the technical software companies that I work with, the startups, is you see the chief technical officer, when things are difficult and stressful, they go back to the superpower, or the thing that made them great in the first place, which was coding and doing stuff. And so they'll spend the weekend coding a new feature, bring it into the team and say, hey, look, I've done this great thing. And the team are like, but you didn't tell us you were going to do this. And actually, it's not great. It's not exactly what we're after. And so what you see a lot of the time with leaders going through that transitionary phase is they rely on the superpower that made them great in the first place. Maybe that was coding over the weekend, or maybe if they were the CEO, that was hammering sales calls and getting loads of sales leads in, whatever it is. But people go back to their superpower when they go to that growth phase. And actually, that's not the thing that's going to drive that forward. And actually, it can be counterproductive to that growth growth at that point. So what you've got to understand as a leader, what is your superpower? And there's strengths to that, but conversely, there's a weakness to that as well that you can go back to. And you almost have at that point have to reinvent yourself to be something different, to be somebody who's a better leader in that situation. And you see this actually more acutely at points of folks who are at that point in their career where they are kind of late 30s, early 40s, when you get shifted that level of management up from the management of kind of managing a team of people that are doing a job to managing a few managers that are managing people doing a job, is your skill sets fundamentally has to change when you make that level up away from being an expert at doing the job into being an expert of how to get people to do the best job that they can be. And you see that again with people at that level. They have to reinvent themselves from being the person that is across everything and has the deep knowledge of how everything works. That's great and that's useful, but that's also holding them back in terms of taking them to the next point in their career where they've got to be that zone of genius they need to enter is that ability to be a leader of people, understand how people work, not how systems work. And that big shift for people is extremely tough, which is why you see a lot of people stumbling in their career at that age, but also why you see a lot of leaders stumbling in their business at that stage as well, because they need to reinvent and let go of the things that have made them great in the first place to be something different. And that's hard for a lot of people. You know, can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, of course you can. That dog's just got to want to learn those new tricks.
That's
and hard
absolutely
part is
right. Yes.
Yeah,
and you've got to, and you know, leaders need to understand that they need to employ people that may have more knowledge than them, and not to be jealous of the skills that this new person actually brings to the table. And that's the job of the leader, is to employ people that are better than you, because that can only make your business better. And
that's hard, especially if you're CEO. You're like, well, I'm the best at this stuff. Actually, that's what I'm here to be. I've got to be the best at everything. And actually, you've got to let that go. You can't be that anymore. And that mindset has to shift. Is you can be, again, it can be in your zone of excellence. Your zone of genius needs to be, I'm great at building team and in hiring people who are better than me and empowering them and creating the conditions for success. So my job becomes about creating the conditions for success, not doing the work and building the thing. I've got to create conditions, and that's again a different mindset.
It is, and you know, even when you're just looking just to outsource some of your work, you know, because I'm at that point now where I want to grow my business, and I'm looking to outsource some of the things that I'm doing, and you know, for me, giving those things up is going to be for me quite a challenging thing, but I know that I have to give them up because just because I'm good at them, and as you explained before, I need to find someone who can either be as good as me or better. But it's and you're right, it's quite a difficult task to give up those things that you've been so good at for so long and give them to somebody else, because you're in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, are they going to do it like I want them to? You know, is it going to be the same? Is it going to be horrible? You know, and it's quite a challenging time. So I can imagine what it would be like to, you know, run a corporation and have those same thoughts.
All the time. And that feeling's the same if you're hiring a contractor to manage your social media versus hiring a chief operating officer if you're the CEO. The feeling's the same. And letting that and understanding actually, and what you see about the best leaders is they understand that it's going to take that person a bit of time to be great, and that they aren't going to do things the same way as me. You've got to have that. If you're hiring, again, back to our early conversation, if you're hiring somebody who's like a clone of you that's going to do the same things you're doing, there's no real advantage in doing that as a business. There's not really.
No, I don't want the person to be the same as me. I want them to bring themselves to the table.
And you've just got to understand that they will do it differently, let that go. And maybe their first shot of that isn't going to be perfect, but then that's what you're there for, is to help them, again, help create the conditions for their success. And part of that is giving them a safe space to talk about their ideas and what they're going to do, a sandbox to play in before this stuff goes out to the wider world, so they can build the confidence, and you can build your confidence in them that they're doing the right stuff. You can't suddenly expect them to be amazing, because again, you may not know exactly what that amazing is going to look like and be comfortable with that. And actually, again, you know, that's a huge pressure on them as well. So yeah, it's a gentle process to bring somebody on for them to be great. They can't be amazing instantly.
Oh, absolutely not. No, just because they do one amazing thing doesn't mean they're going to be amazing all the time. And it really is hard to be amazing all the time.
It is.
It is. Now, have you written any books on this topic at all, Joe?
No, do you know what? I'm in the process of writing a book called The Modern CEO, which is a kind of, and I'll share the link. The links, I'll give you the link to put into the show notes around. It's this sort of, I'm calling it the sort of skill set and mindset of a modern leader in the 2020s. So these are ideas, philosophies, skills that you need to have as a leader to be successful now. Because again, a lot of management theory certainly is levels at the top of, certainly for a CEO, is kind of fairly outdated. It's stuff that was identified and laid down in the kind of 70s, 80s, and 90s. So it's time for a change. And really what I'm trying to do is to build a way of being for CEOs that means that they can thrive and be successful in the 2020s. So where it is now is it's a list of ideas, and I'll share that with you. And that's going to become a book, a scorecard, and variety of other things fairly soon. I'm still working on it. And really what I'm looking for is feedback from people listening and watching this as to what they think. What have I got right? What have I got wrong? What am I missing? So yes, it's coming. But I want to get some insight from the folks out there as to how
That's a good idea. You know, a lot of people who write books don't get the feedback from others, and they write what they think the people want rather than asking, what do you want?
Yeah, and again, selfishly, it takes a bit of the pressure off me as well, because that means that when I put it out there, I can be confident that it's the right thing, that it is the thing that it needs to be. So in gathering all of this feedback, it's really been really helpful for me to have that confidence. Because again, for a lot of us, writing a book is a big deal. I don't know if you talk about it, people, and you look at people, right? Because again, I work with a lot of very successful people who've written books, and a lot of them have that imposter syndrome feeling of like, oh my God, what if people read this and think it's awful? Or what if they see I'm a fraud when they start reading my book? A lot of us feel like that. And a lot of us feel that way. And so we don't create and put things out into the world because of that very feeling. But the way I like to see it is imposter syndrome is a feature and not a bug. The reality that you feel like that means that the thing you're going to put out there is going to be 10 times better than it would have been otherwise, because you're going out there to get the feedback. You're second guessing yourself. You're looking for insights that are out there. So what I've realized is I have huge imposter syndrome in writing this book, and this will be my second book. I've written a book before, and I'm still feeling it now. And so it's very natural. So I'm going to lean into that and get the people out there to help me do it so that I can feel better. Because again, I know my imposter syndrome is a feature and not a bug.
That's good. Yeah, because I think we all get imposter syndrome at certain times of our careers or our businesses or whatever it might be. And yeah, I like that it's a feature, not a bug. I think I'll keep that in mind.
Well, and I always say is if you're not feeling it a little bit, you're probably not enjoying and doing the stuff you should be doing. If you feel too comfortable, the opposite's true. And you get, what it's like when you feel a bit comfortable, you get a bit lethargic, you feel a bit muddy. It's not a nice place to be. And so having a little bit of excitement from putting yourself out there and having that little bit of imposter syndrome, that little bit of frisson that comes from that, can be really helpful to people. I talk about it being like being in the queue or the line for the roller coaster. Some people feel really excited and some people feel absolutely petrified. And really, that's the kind of same feeling. It's just a different way of interpreting it. And all you've got to realize is if you're feeling that fear of the situation you're in, being that leader, putting a book out, whatever, that actually that can push you forward. That can be the excitement that you need and the energy you need to actually make that big step to the next point in your career or in your business or whatever that might be. Is that actually that energy you can harness to be a good thing, not something that's going to hold you back.
It's a really good point, Joe. Thank you for sharing that little bit of wisdom. I think, yeah, I will keep that in mind for future reference. Now, where can people find you, Joe, if they want to get in touch with you or to work with you?
Yeah, the easiest place is if you just Google Mr. Joe, MRJOE, you'll find me. I'm mrjoe.uk is my website. Everything's there. So you can find me on all the socials on LinkedIn and everything there as well. But mrjoe.uk is the best place. I have a YouTube channel with lots of stuff that I'm sharing. The modern CEO stuff is all at mrjoe.uk. So just go to mrjoe.uk and it's all there.
Wonderful. If you had some words of wisdom to give yourself 20 years ago, what would it be?
Oh, embrace the fear, definitely. Don't let it hold you back, because it did for too long. Is that fear is a natural thing. I wish I'd embraced it and been bolder earlier in my life. and done the things that I really knew I could do, that it took me to sort of be in my 30s and 40s to have the confidence to do. I wish I'd done more stuff earlier. So yeah, feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Good stuff. That's good words to live by, good wisdom to live by. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and sharing your time with me.
No, thanks, Rose, and thanks everybody for listening and watching.
Bye-bye for now.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.